What's going on, folks? I had to quickly jump on here, record this very, very quick episode of the PR Bunker podcast, coming back to the office from a crisis communication situation interview with the Boston Globe for a client of mine. Some things that, played out exactly how I thought they would play out during our prep session, but it reminded me of the things that I've picked up over the years to help manage these things that could be applicable to the things you're going through as a business owner or as somebody who's in PR marketing who has clients that are going through this stuff. So this is a really quick down and dirty session, but welcome to the PR Bunker podcast. This is Don Martelli, the CEO of the PR Bunker. We are a strategic communications and public relations agency in Boston that works with nonprofits, professional services, education, and real estate clients. Our podcast really helps you to navigate all the things going on in PR in the maddening world that is public relations and everything we do that most people don't understand, but we understand because we're in the trenches every single day, or if I like to say, in the bunker all day long. There's a fast-paced world to which we operate, and everything's changing on a dime all day long, including the media and how the media reacts to particular things and how they pick up stories. Today's episode is a very, very quick one because I literally am off the heels of a Boston Globe interview with a client of mine that could have been a very contentious conversation, bad story, but I think the way it played out was orchestrated and done well by myself, if I could pat myself on the back, and the client who did really well during media training. But today is about going through those particular things that I've just learned over the years that you can quickly apply to any situation, whether it be a media situation or any situation to which you're communicating with an audience that could be a little scratchy. What I mean by scratchy, it could be some sort of major issue with the company, product recalls, misconduct by an executive, some issue that's happening that just generally could hamper the reputation of your organization. And with that, there are about 5 particular areas to which I think about when it comes to managing a crisis for a client, specifically around dealing with the media. The first one is preparation. You gotta prep. Crisis can arise at any given time, and the level of importance can be the utmost importance or small, but a fire starts with a spark, and that spark can turn into a full inferno in like 2 seconds. Understanding who within your world can help manage that crisis is also important. Designating teams and roles and responsibilities amongst your staff to be able to manage that. In this particular case, the one I've been talking about since I started this episode, I can't get into details, obviously, but generally there was an article that appeared in a industry vertical that was fairly libelous and really not good reporting at all, which has created some attention for this particular organization, which is a fairly visible, community-driven organization in the greater Boston area, which is the only reason why this story is a story is because of the reputation of this particular organization. We got called by the Boston Globe, who's on this story, because they read the piece in this industry vertical, and I brokered the deal and talked to the reporter and agreed to meet in person. And in between then, I talked to the client and had a good, quick media training session, and I told them that the story is going to play out in a very particular way. And everything that happened literally 2 hours ago played out exactly the way I described it. And it's only because I've gone through the paces with these sort of situations before. So my second point here is preparing. I mean, you can never prepare enough for an engagement with a reporter, regardless if it's a good story, bad story, horrible story. You have to be able to prepare and be able to live in the moment and pivot when you can. Understanding, the expectation of the reporter you're meeting in terms of what are they covering, what are their deadlines, who have they spoken to, understanding the framework to which they're walking into the room is super, super critical to any media interview. You don't want to assume that they don't have background or they haven't spoken to the opposition. Let's assume that all of that's going to be true and prepare for that. Researching the topic, researching the reporter, what they've covered in the past, their tone, the way they write, the way they dig into questions, all that stuff is relevant to understand the journalistic style of this individual going into that meeting. Finally, crafting messaging and talking points that align with the story we want to tell versus the story that the paper may want to tell. Really hard thing to do, but it's really important to think through that. and have like kind of cheat sheets written down on a card or a notebook that's in front of you while you're doing the interview. Making sure you're going to have those prepared points in front of you during that engagement is going to be critical. Knowing you're going to have difficult questions, be prepared for it. They're coming in hot, and you got to be able to answer the bell right away. You can't, hey, can I get back to you in 10 minutes? It's never going to happen. Got to be prepared. Got to think through those tough questions, and more importantly, pivot to an answer you want to get to versus the answer that they want to get out of you. Practicing active listening, huge, right? So as a reporter is asking a question and doing a little opining, just letting the air sit and letting the reporter speak and not really understanding what they're asking of you, which is going to buy you some time to respond in a way that's going to be brand friendly in particular cases. But having that active listening and maintaining composure during the interview is huge, because if you get upset and all of a sudden you're throwing things across the room, all of that stuff is going to be painted pretty vividly in the story. The hardest part of all this, frankly, and it's the part that I really love the best, is managing the interview as it's happening. Understanding body language, tonality of questions, making sure that your clients are hitting their particular points. There's only so much you can do as a PR practitioner. Unless you're giving the interview and the responses yourself, you are literally a Geppetto, managing Pinocchio without the strings. You're there in the room and you're trying to craft this whole thing, but you've got to be able to make sure your client is prepared and that they know clearly what lanes they can speak to and what lanes they should not speak to. In this particular case, the two folks that were interviewed did a masterful job because of the preparation and because of their knowledge around the particular topic we were speaking to. Understanding, during the moment that it's not just question, answer. This is your opportunity, whether it's a minute, 2 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 hours, to mold the conversation to where you want it to go versus where the reporter wants to take it, which is really hard to do for some because we're just so programmed to answer the question right away. You don't have to answer the question. Hey, Don Martelli, do you feel this black pen is black? It's a great question, John, but I think that black marker is really blue, and here's why. And you pivot. So pivoting is really, really huge, and the client did a massive job in that today during the interview with the Globe. Client also did a great job in providing accurate data, timelines, and context to the story, which I think in this particular case was important because the vertical outlet that initially broke this thing dove into one side and didn't care to get the other side of the story and just could have glossed over particular quotes we provided. In this particular case, we were able to provide context, data points, and just other information that gave a much different picture to the reporter than what he initially read in this vertical, which was huge. And finally, and so like I said before, this is going to be a quick podcast, the post-interview follow-up is huge, right? We sat there after I walked the reporter out, sat down with the two clients, and I graded them, and I gave them some feedback on mannerisms, delivering talking points, the way they were able to fluidly get in and out of those questions and bridge and pivot to points we wanted to make as an organization, reflecting on kind of what could have been better or delivered in a different way. Gives us a chance to really refine that media engagement in the future. And it also gives us a chance to go back to the reporter and say, hey, there's a couple points we want to clarify if that's okay with you, which we can email him. So that post-interview follow-up is absolutely huge, making sure you can learn from that experience in a way that just improves it moving forward. And that continuous improvement is going to be useful because regardless if you're speaking to a member of the media or a member of your company, an employee, your boss, those instances where you're having really difficult conversations, it really helps to have a skill set where you can fluidly get in and out of conversations, pivot to particular points, make a resounding argument, or have good active listening so you can respond in real time. Any media I've ever done, it never really pans out the way you expect it to be, but this one, in this particular, is the only reason why I jumped in this podcast real quick to record this episode. It was done to a T. Everything I described in terms of where the reporter was going to sit, the kind of arc of the questions he was going to ask, including we covered a lot of things today. Was there anything else that we did not cover you'd like to expand on, which is that open-ended last question, which is typically the lead of any story. My client looked at me with his eyes wide open, and he basically was saying to me without saying it, oh, my God, we're at this point where everything we've done and discussed in the last 24 hours is actually happening to a T. And he went right into the key talking points, summarized the conversation in a way that was very professional, painted the brand in a really good way. And I think when we were initially contacted about this particular media opportunity, nervous as all hell, right? Like, oh shit, here we go, Boston Globe, this is going to be brutal, going to fight this sort of thing. But with the preparation, the context, timelines, background, and space enough to have a conversation versus being fired off at questions Q&A style, gave us an opportunity to mold the story as best as we possibly could in a way, in an environment that was controlled. It was in this particular client's office, so it's sort of like we were playing on our home field versus being on the road. So it was a friendly environment. He was very comfortable. Both clients did really, really well. And I just thought that, the key lesson here is just that you can't do enough prep, and you know generally the questions that you're going to get, and you just got to prepare your clients to just answer those questions, but not just answer them, but truly pivot to points you want to make to mold the story on your own. Because if you just eat what they're serving you, that's it. That's what you're going to get. But if you have 30 seconds, 30 minutes, 30 hours, you use every second of that time to pivot to points you want to make, so it makes the story either neutral, positive, neutral, but not neutral, negative, or negative at all. You do everything you possibly can to make sure that you are providing sound bites that are relevant, timely, contextual, but also move your part of the story forward. So the 5 key areas again here: prepare for the crisis as best as you possibly can. Do mock interviews, prepare for the media interviews themselves, including the mechanics, where you're going to sit, what are you going to wear, whether it's on TV, radio, live radio, print, online, podcast. Prepare for all of that stuff. Go through the questions, pretend to be a reporter, ask all the ugly questions that may not ever get asked, but ask them anyway so your client's prepared. And then as the game is unfolding, making sure that you're on the sideline, calling the shots as best as you possibly can. I even had hand signals in the media interview that would indicate to my client, hey, you're going too far down the path. Enough's enough, cut the shit, pivot to something else. And this hand signal was pivot to this particular talking point. So literally I'm on the sideline, like Bill Belichick, making calls during the interview so the clients understand, hey, look, you made your point. Let the dead air sit and don't give them any more context to this particular point of the conversation. So managing the interview while the interview is happening is such an important part of this entire thing, because it could make or break the story. 4th, post-analysis, autopsy, dive into it. What did we do well? What did we, screw up? What could be better? Follow-up note to the reporter. Thanks for your time. Appreciate the opportunity, blah, 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 blah. It's super, super important. And then using that whole experience as a playbook for the next engagement, and then going through that process again and again and again and again. Because regardless of what the situation is going to be, whether it be a small crisis, good story, bad story, neutral story, those mechanics with dealing with the media in real time are pretty important. So especially that number 3, which is managing the interview while you're in the middle of the crisis, which is an interesting thing to do, because as a PR practitioner, you're literally on the sideline, and while you want to interject yourself into the story, that's not our job. Our job is to prepare, react, and pivot where we can. But if you can kind of figure out those little, kind of quirky mechanics within the interview as it's actually happening in person, even online, there's ways to do this. But kind of giving that Geppetto vibe is really important, because you just want to make sure your client stays on task and stays on focus and moves the story where it's got to go. So that's it. I appreciate you all listening to this quick podcast today. Thank you for tuning in to the PR Bunker Podcast. I know this is a really quick, down and dirty one, but I had to get this off my chest coming off that interview with the Globe. I had to share some insights, especially that, managing the interview while the interview is happening. But don't forget to subscribe, share this, tell your friends that are in this space. I'm hoping to do more of this quick-hitting stuff, have some of you on here to talk about the work you're doing in the PR space. So again, Don Martelli, CEO of the PR Bunker. Appreciate you all listening in, and I'll catch you next time. See you.